What is Continental Philosophy? The term Continental Philosophy is widely used in British and American philosophy to refer to such varied philosophical tendencies within European thought, such as existentialism, phenomenology, structuralism, post-structuralism, and the work of Friedrich Nietzsche, the Frankfurt School, and Antonio Gramsci. The phrase is not normally in Europe, where, as Vincent Deacom has remarked, the notion of continental philosophy is viewed with as much wariness as the idea of a continental breakfast. It must be noted that in the recent history of philosophy, we have what we call the analytic and continental philosophy divide. Hence, we can fully make sense of the term continental philosophy if it is understood vis-à-vis analytic philosophy. The philosophy department of the University of Warwick offers a concise distinction between analytic and continental philosophy. It reads: Analytic philosophy follows in the tradition established by the great late 19th and early 20th philosophers, Gottlob Frege, and Bertrand Russell. It is marked by a focus on questions about the nature of language, meaning and thought, and on questions about how the mind relates to the world. An example of such a question is the meaning of a name just the object in the world to which that name refers? On the one hand, it might seem obvious that the answer is yes. After all, we might think, a name's function is to pick out particular objects in the world, and so it is natural to think that those objects are their meanings. On the other hand, there is a reason to think the answer is no. After all, names like Santa Claus seem to be perfectly meaningful. But they do not pick out any object in the world. So, what, then, is the meaning of a name? Analytical philosophers have tended to pursue these questions through methods of argument and proof similar to those used in mathematics and logic. Continental philosophy is a discipline that draws on a range of distinct, but related traditions of European philosophy, exemplified by such philosophers as Hegel, Schopenhauer, and Nietzsche, and 20th-century French thinkers, such as Sartre, Foucault, and Deleuze. Continental philosophy is often characterized by a focus on certain themes, which include history, politics particularly, the politics of gender and sexuality, the self and self-consciousness, freedom, desire and the will. The techniques of continental philosophy are as wide-ranging as its subject matter, from close historical analysis of texts, to creative reading of ancient and modern literature, to reflection on one's own lived experience. Questions that one might find addressed in continental philosophy are, for example, has philosophy traditionally focused too exclusively on the being of objects in its understanding of being? Are there different modes of being? And, is our everyday understanding of ourselves mostly inauthentic and, if so, what would an authentic existence be? It is important to note that the notion of a divorce between Anglo-American and European developments in philosophy stems in part from the perceived isolation of analytic philosophy, which has long been the dominant force within British universities, but which was until recently largely ignored in Europe. As is well known, it was only in the 1980s that French philosophers began to take a serious interest in the analytic tradition. The sense of a divorce is heightened by the fact that the vector of the importation into Britain of continental philosophy has not, with some exceptions, been philosophy departments, which tend to view Kant as the last good continental philosopher, but literary departments and centres for cultural studies. Cambridge University's refusal to award Jacques Derrida an honorary degree in 1992 was widely viewed as a symptom of a wider problem. It was argued that this demonstrated analytical philosophers were scarcely in a position to evaluate the work of the followers of Derrida, and that this called the whole notion of peer review into question. In 1993, a Society of European Philosophy was, therefore, established in Britain to encounter the marginalization of European philosophical traditions and to affirm their expanding influence and vitality.